BMW Motorcycle Owners of America present the Short Wheelbase Podcast. With members in all 50 states, Canada, and across the globe, the BMW MOA invites you to ride inspired. Learn more about membership benefits, including roadside assistance, tire hazard protection, and more at bmwmoa.org. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is also brought to you by Boxer2valve, supplier of quality OEM and aftermarket parts and specialty tools, and by Air Support BMW, offering premium driveline rebuilding and performance enhancements for your air-cooled BMW.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 24 of the Short Wheelbase Podcast.
Wow, 24.
24.
All right.
We've got one for every hour of the day. You know, you can,
Well
and
said.
I think based on the times of most of these, you could probably watch straight through for 24 hours if you wanted to.
That's right.
We've got Daren on the show today. So I think for the first time in a few weeks, we're going to kind of go back to our standard format where we'll go over some garage updates. We'll do a featured bike, which this week is going to be my buddy Chris's 1974 R90/6. We've got an excerpt from William Plam on bearings and top hat spacers in the /5, 6, and 7 spoked wheels.
Correct.
Which, as our regular listeners probably remember, has been a hot topic for us recently with the Green Machine.
It has.
So we're getting some definitive answers now, and we're going to share those with you in,
That's
in
right.
that clip. Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to cover, like I've been trying to circle back on some of the bikes that we featured in the past.
Okay.
And so we're gonna do a quick update from this was back in episode 3, actually. So pretty early episode. We featured an Instagram user that goes by the name of @1TSJus, which I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, his name is Justin, and that's where the name comes from.
Yep.
He had that really cool custom bike with the leather knee pads on like the
Yes,
/5/6 big tank.
Yes.
He recently, unfortunately, had a little bit of a fender bender. I don't remember all the details. I think he got hit by a car from behind kind of situation, and has been dealing just with some health issues resulting from that, and isn't really riding anymore, which is an understandable response. But because of that, he has now got that bike up for sale. So like I said, it's an R75/5 custom. I'll throw some pictures up from the first time we featured it so you guys can remember what it is. But according to him, the bike's running, it's shifting fine. What it does need is new handlebars, a headlight lens, a valve cover, and a fork brace. He said maybe a few other things depending on how perfect you want to make the bike. But those are the things that would need to be on it to be rideable again. He says he's got a whole bunch of extra goodies and parts and stuff to include in the sale. So if you're interested, hit him up on Instagram. Like I said before, his name is the number 1TS.JUS. If it's easier, just find me on Airhead Misfits or comment below and we'll put you two in touch. We'd love to just get that bike sold for him and into some hands that are ready to have a new bike and a new project. So let us know. And the one other thing I wanted to touch on before we jump into the garage updates is the Airhead market right now.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods, but I know here in Colorado on Marketplace, on Craigslist, it seems like there is a huge influx of bikes. You know, usually I'd be tracking 2 to 3 bikes for sale at the time because I'm an addict. Right now I'm tracking like a dozen bikes, and I have been for the last probably 2 months. And the bikes are just sitting. They're sitting long. I'm seeing price cuts on them. Some of the starting prices on them seem low to me compared to a year or even 2 years ago. And so I'm just kind of curious. I mean, this is my anecdotal experience, right?
Right.
I'm kind of curious, Daren, what you're seeing in your neck of the woods. Is it a similar vibe on bikes for you?
Good question. So the Airhead market in sort of the Mid-South will include Memphis, Mississippi, Arkansas, maybe even sort of go up to St. Louis, Kansas City, that kind of area. Honestly, Nick, I really haven't been scoping out a lot recently. I'm up to the ears here in motorcycles in the garage.
It's true.
But all that being said, our old friend Wes at Apex Cycles had a 79 RT for sale, and I considered buying it. It was a non-runner, had been sitting for a long time. It was appealing to me because it was all original paint. 79 RT the first year. That would slide right into my collection. I don't have a 79 bike. The price was right. I just decided to pass on it. I thought it might have been a good rescue sort of thing. Might have made a neat episode. Anyway, all that being said, he was asking $1,000 for it, for a complete bike. Now, it needed probably everything, because Lord knows how long it had been sitting. So, we've discussed this before. Depending on your level of what you want to do to a motorcycle, you're probably looking at a couple grand anyway. But to your question, honestly, I just haven't seen a lot for sale. You're right. Ones that I do come across seem to have been for sale for a while. And the market and the pricing, as you're saying, sort of anecdotally, and just when I'm casually looking at, it does seem to have dipped a little bit. I mean, we are how far removed now from the crazy times, 2020, 21, the COVID prices, bring a trailer explosion, all that seems to have leveled off. We're probably back down to a little bit more reasonable pricing for motorcycles. And I would venture to say, this, and I don't know what this time of year has anything to do with it as well. Is summertime a good time to buy a bike? I don't know. Generally, my purchases are in the winter for whatever reason. So maybe there's just a glut in the market right now, just a lot out there.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned bring a trailer. As you said that, I just remembered that I believe I saw that they're adding a new fee.
10%.
For sellers. The 10% seller's fee, which I'm curious to see if that is going to discourage people from listing there and kind of what the long-term impacts of that has on the market as well. So yeah, it's interesting that so many bikes are popping up. I don't know, maybe it's just a local thing. Folks, if you're listening and you've noticed this too, please jump in the comments. I'd love to hear more. I'd love to know if I should be buying bikes right now. like
it's always a good time, Nick. Yeah.
Is it the low point? Should I be jumping on these things now and holding on to them?
Honestly, I think in the past 5 years, just about everything I've bought and sold has been on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah. It's kind
with
of
the exception of the green machine, obviously.
Right.
But I mean, that's just where I'm seeing bikes. That's where I'm selling bikes. That just seems to be where the marketplace is, as we talked about. Bring a trailer. I think, again, anecdotally, I think it's dipped off a little bit. Maybe that's why they brought in that extra fee to try to recoup some costs and get their profit margin back up. I don't know. I would be loath personally to either buy or sell, or let me rephrase that. I would be loath to sell one on there. I think that's a difficult place to sell. Buying, I've seen some real good bargains, not necessarily for Airheads, but other bikes, and especially with no reserve. I mean, you can really get a bargain on there if you play your cards right.
Yep, totally. I agree. There's been a few bikes where I couldn't believe how much it sold for, but then there's the next bike comes along and I'm like, wait, why did that one go for so much less?
Yeah, no telling.
I think it just has a lot to do with the buzz that happens around it and how the comment stream happens, and there's so many variables, which to your point is why I would be terrified to sell a bike on there, because it could go one of two ways, right? It could either blow up and end up selling for way more than you anticipated, or it could just sit there and never hit the reserve, or worse, selling at no reserve and not even making back the money that you have into it.
Yeah, that and having to answer questions and comments. I'd have a hard time doing that. I really would.
It's hard enough commenting an ADV rider occasionally. I can.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right, cool. Well, like I said, everybody, if you have a thought on this, I'd love to hear about it.
Yes.
It's speaking of ADV Rider, it's something that actually just came up again today about the marketplace. I feel like that gets discussed quite frequently there. And I just love to hear more thoughts and more opinions on that. So hop in the comments.
Indeed.
So moving on to the garage updates, I'll kick it off because I've got a light update this week. I've mostly just been riding.
Good.
I did receive the /6 wheel that you shipped me that I purchased at the rally. So I now have my rally souvenir.
Okay.
That will likely get put onto the R90/6 project, at least to build out a roller. I have some other hubs I might build up as the actual wheels I run on it. But it'll allow me to kind of get my roller built. So that'll be great. And the only other thing I have on the horizon is I've got a buddy who wants to do some camping here in Colorado in the fall, and I'd really love to be able to take the conversion. So I've got new latches and fiberglass repair supplies to kind of fix those enduro bags I have. There's some cracks and holes in the bottom of them from, I think, where they got a little too close to the exhaust. So I'm going to try to fix those up so I can load them up with camping gear. But I've just been riding, so I haven't had a chance to deal with it.
I'm glad. Well, that's good. That's what this time of year is all about.
Exactly. I'm not complaining in any way.
And the wheel, let me just say, if anybody needs to ship a wheel or you buy a wheel from somebody and they say, I can't find a box for it, Nick, I think you saw exactly what worked perfectly, didn't you?
Yep, I have a picture of it. I'll post it right here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the fan box, it was pretty funny. I was actually out of town when it arrived, and I had a friend stopping by and bringing our mail in and just watering plants and things like that. And they sent me a picture of the box, and they're like, you said it was a motorcycle wheel, but it looks like a fan.
It's perfect. I mean, it fit in there great.
I opened it up, and I'm like, wow, this is like the perfect size for a /6 rear wheel.
That's exactly right.
So, yeah, there you go. Keep your fan boxes if you know you're going to have to ship a wheel.
Yes.
Daren, what do you have going on in the garage?
Garage updates. Nick, it's been busy. It's been hot here in Arkansas. So, of note, new tires on the 77S. And it's a kind of a yin and a yang. So, it's good when the weather's warm. You can set your new tires outside. Here, when the heat index is well above 100, you put them in the sun, and in 0.2 seconds, they've reached a temperature close to Hades, and they go on very easily. So there's that. The bad part about it is I lose 27 pounds of water weight putting them on, sweating in the garage. The other thing I'll say about the tires, mounting wise, is, for a number of years, I had a Nomar tire changer. And I used that a lot because I had dirt bike tires. And I almost always needed some sort of machine, angling and iron and this, that, and the other thing. I couldn't just do it on the floor, especially with rim locks and stuff like that. It was just easier to use the Nomar. Here recently, I've just been able to do it on the floor. Cool. With the warmer weather, I've spooned on some tires. I had to, of course, do some work on the green machine. Same thing. Swapping the tire off, getting it on and off. I was able to do that on the floor quite easily. Again, the warm weather's really nice. However, getting an old tire off on the 77S, I think those tires had been on there. The date code was 2011. So they had probably been on there since 2012, maybe 2013. And I did have to use the Nomar to get those off. I could break the bead, but just getting a big tire iron down in there on those rock hard tires just was not happening.
Yeah, I had that same struggle with when I did the conversion. Oh, it's the worst.
It is. As far as tires go, I kind of went off the map a little bit here. Anybody who's been searching for Airhead tires recently, especially for 247 or twin shock tires from the 70s era, the options are not what they used to be. The Metzlers, the ME77s, and the LaserTech. Some of those, I think the LaserTech or the ME77, one of those two is not being offered any longer. I went to Max BMW just to see what they're offering, and you can't get that. That was a real popular set. What I used to get was a LaserTech front and an ME77 rear. That's not available. There's lots of other brands you can get, and they're fine. They're good tires, great road tires. I still prefer something with a little bit more of a vintage look and tread. So I found a place in Germany called Heavy Tuned.
Okay.
Yes, Heavy Tuned. And I got a set of Continentals, the RB2 and the K112, which is OEM tires for twin shocks back in the day. Got those delivered from Germany, roughly the same price as what you would spend on a set of tires from any other known supplier. So if you say you got them from Max, or what's the Revzilla, I think a lot of people buy tires from. It was maybe $20 extra, but I ordered them. 2 weeks later, there's a giant box from DHL with 2 tires in it ready to go. And it was affordably priced. So there are options out there if you're willing to spend a few more bucks maybe on shipping and want to look at some other offerings, because in Europe, they're still making and selling tires that we don't get here in the States. So FYI.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. Yeah. It's always been a struggle. I mean, it's always been a little bit hard to get tires for these bikes, but it's definitely gotten a little bit harder over the last couple of years.
Yep. Also with the 77, new steering head bearings. I think we might have talked about this before. That bike has 15,000 miles on it. So when I took the steering head apart, the bearings and the races were in excellent condition. It's just the grease had dried up and gone a little caramel color and was a little bit hard. So I took them off, cleaned them, repacked them with grease, put it in, called it good. It's the first time I've ever done that. Almost always when I'm getting into a bike, it's going to get a new set of bearings in races. In this case, they look fine. I cleaned them, re-greased them, put them in, easy breezy. Fork rebuild, did that. New tires, went on about 150-mile ride this past weekend. Bike feels great, handles great, stops great, runs great, everything. So I'm really pleased with it. If you remember, I got that bike back in January. And so this was really the first ride in earnest this past weekend with that bike, getting it back on the road. And I also, you'll see in the photos here, the original tag that came with that motorcycle was a California tag. I scraped off all the inspection stickers and all the way down to March of 1978. That tag had been with that bike that long. It's pretty amazing.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, that's, I wish they did that here in Colorado. Like here, you register a bike and you can't keep the plate. Everything has to get recirculated. So that's pretty cool that they were able to keep that for that long.
Yeah. And I'm going to keep the tag on there. I've got it on there now. I've got the Arkansas antique tag in the seat tray. And if I get pulled over by a cop, I'll just be like, I forgot to put it on. Here it is. If you really need me to put it on, I'll put it on right now. So that blue plate just looks kind of neat on there with the 78 registration on that bike.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's cool. And just carry a bill of sale and say that you just bought it and you were riding it back in California.
That's exactly right.
I've never done that.
Yeah, exactly. And then I found locally to me, and when I say locally, about an hour and a half away, a BMW factory windshield from the 70s.
Oh, yeah, cool.
It was for sale down in Cabot, Arkansas, a little over an hour from me. The guy wanted $40 for it. And I just thought, I'll take a risk on that. $40, it's in good shape. It's original period accessory. Let's go for it. And I'll meet somebody new. So I went down, met a fella down there. He had a /5 that he had just bought that the windshield had was on it. Really not designed for the /5, but it worked. But the neat thing about it, it had all the original mounting hardware, the frame, The top of the handlebar clamps had the cutouts on them, so you bolt the mounting bracket. This is kind of a bad knuckle display here, but the handlebar clamps, it mounts to the front foremost post on the handlebar clamp. So that was kind of neat. And I will say it fit in there really nice. Fit in between the voltmeter and the clock, in between the gauges. So no fitment issues. I might have offered this for you had I had it back then for the trip. Here's what I'll say about it. So we've talked about fairings before. RTs, I never really got along with an RT fairing. This one's kind of in between. So the height is sort of right for me. It's kind of like right at that precipice where it gets a little bit of buffeting, but it's not too bad. Mm-hmm. It's not as bad as an RT. It's not as nice as not having a fairing. Am I going to use it a lot? No, but probably this fall or this winter, I'll stick it back on if I'm taking, maybe I'll go to Memphis or something and do a longer ride. And it'll be nice to get the wind off me and stay a little bit warmer. So for $40, nice original period piece, easy on, easy off. I thought it was pretty cool.
Can't beat it. That's cool. Especially because it's an original thing, right? Like period correct stuff is so hard to get. I mean, I would have probably bought it. I would have probably bought it too, just to put it on the shelf. And
exactly.
Even if I ended up just passing along with the bike, if I ever sold it, it's just kind of a cool thing to have. So cool. I'm glad you were able to scoop that up.
Yep. One last thing I'll say.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything else?
So here's a follow up on the Green Machine. So two things came to light after your ride. So when I'm riding that bike here, it's normally to and from work, maybe a short weekend ride, 30, 40 mile ride, whatever it is. You put a lot more miles on it and rode it for a longer stretch than I've had since I got it back home.
Mm-hmm.
Two things came up. One, the clutch rod seal is not sealing. So there's a little bit of oil drip coming from the throwout. It's on the back of the transmission. So I've got to replace that seal. I'm assuming I put a new one in there. Maybe I didn't get it in right. Something went askew. So that's got to be repaired. And then the other thing I noticed is the tachometer drive seal in the timing cover has finally given up the ghost. So this is the first one on a /6 or /7 that's failed on me. You probably didn't notice this, but it was the first thing I noticed. When after you left, I parked the bike, looked at the timing cover, and there was just a oil stain sort of down there onto the pan. I knew exactly what it was because when I had that bike apart, I noticed there was a little mist in there. But you riding it for 5-6 hours a couple times, sort of exacerbated.
It was hot days too.
That's exactly right.
It was certainly at temperature.
Yeah, sort of exacerbated that seal failure, and it's not huge. I can still ride the bike, with both of these, but essentially what I'm saying is, Nick, is I got oil coming out of both ends. I got it coming out of the transmission, and I got it coming out of the timing cover. I'm not going to worry about it now. That's going to be a winter project for me. With the tack drive seal, as I mentioned, that is in the timing cover proper. Now, I've seen online a fella did sort of a seal extraction where that's a really narrow area where that tachometer cable goes down into the cover there. I saw somebody got a Dremel, put an extender on it, and drilled 2 screws in it and essentially wedged the seal out. And then he didn't show how he got it back in. I'm guessing it was a thin, narrow socket or something like that. That looks like a real risky game of operation, if you remember that board game. To me, that might predate you. I don't know, but
no, I had that one too.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's a spare. I might touch the spare ribs there, as the commercial went. But so what I'm thinking on this, Nick, is I'm just going to ride it out through the summer and into the winter. And probably I'm just going to go ahead and yank the timing cover off. That bike has unknown miles, and a sketchy history. So I'm thinking I may just pull the timing cover, replace all the seals on the cover. There's the crank and the cam seal, if I'm remembering correctly, the tack drive seal. Have a look at the timing chain while I'm in there as well. So got a little work ahead of me on the green machine as we move into the winter months.
Yeah. But that's a good reason to get in there and check things like the timing chain, right? It's, that's always one of those ones on my bikes where I'm like, oh man, I really wish I could see the timing chain and just get a sense of where we're at with it. But don't want to rip it all apart just to find out that there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. I can say anecdotally, the only time I had two that needed replaced. One was on the /5 I owned for a number of years. That didn't really give up the ghost until about 75,000 miles when it became real clacky. On the GS, the 81 GS, I had to replace that not long after I got the bike. It was pretty loud. I've often heard this. I don't know if this is true. A bike like the GS, that timing chain has a tendency to stretch a little quicker and need replacement quicker, especially if you're riding it at lower RPMs and first gear, supposedly, instead, using it more like a dirt bike, which I do, as opposed to just a road bike. So whether that's true, I don't know. But I've had two timing chain replacements during my tenure here.
Right on. So you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I haven't actually done one yet. I haven't had a need to do one yet, but yeah, that's always one of those things though where I'm just like, man, I just wish I could see it and just put a hand on it and take some measurements or do whatever I need to do to get a sense for it. But yeah,
I'll send mine out if you want to do it. I'll ship it out to you. You can.
I don't know if it'll be worth the shipping. Well, good luck on all of that, and sorry for causing all these leaks on your bike.
Yeah, I'm glad it turned up. I like I said, my riding style and habits, it didn't show up. So I'm glad to know it's there, and we'll get it sorted out. No problem.
Right on. Cool. Lots going on in your garage, and more to come, obviously. So we'll circle back on those in future episodes and see how all that goes. We'll move on to the featured bike for this week. And so this bike is, it's a 1974 R90/6 in metallic curry.
Great color.
That color is fantastic. It's not one you see very often.
No.
But this is actually my buddy Chris's bike, Chris Caird. He's a local Colorado rider. He's like 2 or 3 miles from me. Featured this bike on the Airhead Misfits page months, if not over a year ago at this point, but wanted to take some time to feature it here as well. It's got a pretty cool backstory. This was initially his dad's bike. His name is Don. And back when Chris was in high school, Don found this bike disassembled in a barn near their home in Michigan. So Chris and Don together brought the entire bike down into their basement of their house. And for the next 6 years, Don reassembled it in the basement. And then they pushed it up the stairs out of the basement. And Don spent the next 35 years just riding the heck out of this thing.
Wow.
All over Michigan. He went as far as Maine on it. And so he put tons of miles on this bike, put a lot of love into it. In 2014, Don called Chris and said, hey, my riding career is over. And I'd like to pass the torch on to you and pass this bike on to you. But there's one condition.
Okay.
And the condition was, and I quote, "You can't die on my bike."
Okay, that's a big thing to live up to. No pun intended.
That's a big condition. Correct. Yeah. So Chris's response to this was to prove to his dad that he was ready to take ownership of this bike and not die. And so he engaged in one of my favorite pastimes, and that's alcohol-fueled online shopping, which led to a late night acquisition from, I believe, eBay, if I remember the story correctly, of a 1972 R60/5. And so he bought this bike on eBay, had it shipped to Colorado, which is where Chris was living, and obviously still lives. And this is kind of where I first met Chris. He brought that R60/5 to his first tech day. And he was getting the bike prepped for a trip, and he ended up taking a ride from Denver to the Grand Canyon and back. And that was kind of his way of proving to his dad, like, hey, look, I did this big trip on this old bike and I didn't die. So this was enough to convince his dad that he was ready for the R90/6. So they had it shipped out here to Colorado. And Chris has owned it ever since. He's done a lot of great work to this bike. He picked up an S fairing for it and found a great painter who locally paint matched it. Got the pinstriping pretty much spot on. It looks gorgeous, and it's obviously like a color combo with the S fairing that you don't really ever see. So
no, it's great.
Like when you walk up to the bike, you're like, this thing looks original and stock, but then you're like, wait a minute, there's an S fairing on it, and it's not the right bike for an S fairing, but it looks so good. He's rebuilt the carbs. He put a Siebenrock 1000cc kit on it, so it's got a little bit more power. Mm-hmm. He put on a different final drive to let stretch its legs a little bit more. At Parkhouse rebuilt the transmission with Chris.
Yep, great photo of Matt digging into the gearbox there.
There's a photo here. But yeah, I mean, he's just been taking care of this bike ever since he got it from his dad. I think you probably saw in the photos, it came with like a windjammer or something mm-hmm. of the like on it that his dad had on it initially. I personally think the S fairing looks way better.
Agreed.
Because it's gorgeous. But yeah, it's a beautiful bike. He's been putting miles on it and riding it. Chris has also since bought a 78 RS, so he's got 3 Airheads now. He obviously has gotten bit by the Airhead bug. But yeah, just a gorgeous bike. Wanted to share it with everybody. And Daren, what are your thoughts on this beauty?
So am I remembering correctly? It looks like he went dual disc on this thing too.
That his dad did that.
Okay.
I remember when he got the bike initially, and he was like, yeah, my dad did the dual disc conversion on it. And at the time I was still pretty new and I didn't even really know what he was talking about, but it does have the dual disc. That's
one way to attack and improve the braking on a single disc twin shock of that era. Just get you mm-hmm. a fork leg for the right side, I guess.
Yep.
And master cylinder with an extra spigot, and just go for it. Also, did he have both tanks? He had the small tank and the big tank. Was I seeing that right?
Yeah, he has 2 tanks for it. I'm not certain if he picked up that tank after he got it from his dad, or if that came with the bike from his dad. I don't remember the details there, but I know he does have both of them.
I definitely approve of that. Having outfits for your motorcycle always is going to get a thumbs up from me. So, that way you can change it up a little bit.
It's like a new bike all of a sudden.
100%. And then the other thing I'll say about the S fairing, Nick, that was a real popular addition back in the day, because not a lot of people could afford the R90S, but somehow they could justify the extra money for the fairing. Which,
right.
You think about it, it's like, oh, all right, well, maybe it was $1,000 more, but then I don't know how much you were dropping for the fairing back in the day. But it's funny because I was just looking at some photos from a /6 catalog. I guess it was a 75 year. And that's one thing they advertise in the catalog is the S fairings available, color matched for your bike. So that was a real popular addition for a lot of unfaired bikes, was to get that matched S fairing.
Right. I think they look great on pretty much every Airhead.
I agree. I
don't think I've seen it. As long as they're paint matched right, I don't think I've ever seen one that looked bad.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's what we got for the featured bike. Gorgeous bike. Folks, if you want to have your bike featured, please reach out. Shoot me a message on Instagram, drop a line in the comments. I think I mentioned before, I feature bikes on Airhead Misfits. I am slowly running out of bikes at the moment. I have probably another month or 2 worth of bikes sitting in the wait. But I like to kind of be buried in bikes so that I can, not have to worry about what bike I'm posting every other week. So if you have a bike that you want featured, please send it in. get in touch and we'll get that set up. I always send out free stickers. I have some patches right now too that I might sweeten the deal with
there you go.
if you respond to this. So let me know and we'll get you featured.
Let's see those bikes. So before we move on from that, you mentioned he's got a 78 RS. What is it?
It is, I forget the name of the color, but it's that light blue. What is that?
Okay.
It's like that silvery blue.
Yeah. So the same as the 77 first year model, where they carried that paint option into 78.
Yep. It's that same first year color. It has the snowflakes instead of the spoked wheels. Yep.
And he mentioned that it's for sale to you, didn't he?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm supposed to announce that, but
well, you said it's got the wheels turning in your head.
Yeah, it's not for sale yet. I don't know.
Okay.
It might be. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So, and on that, he has the 3/4 seat too, because he likes to has the different outfits for the bikes, just like the bike. So, anyway, moving along. The clip this week, as I mentioned earlier, is from William Plam, and we're gonna roll that in a few minutes here. But we talked a lot. I don't know if that was last episode or 2 episodes ago now, about the top hat and the wheel bearing issues that we dealt with at the rally. And so, Daren and myself and even Brandon, we'd been emailing back and forth all these different, resources we've found online on how this is all supposed to go together. And William kind of puts it great in this. I'll let you introduce it further, but I think William did a really good job of kind of explaining the situation.
He did. Yeah, he did. Anybody who's watched the Boxer2valve videos on wheel bearing service for the /6, it's a great video. Anybody can do this job with just a couple simple additional tools, some spacers, and a propane torch. So there isn't a whole lot to it. Obviously, you need the wetting bands and maybe some shims, but it's an easy job to do. And I went back and watched that video after we had this discussion about where the top hat went. And sure enough, he had it on the inside of the assembly behind the seal. And so I was like, okay, good. I'm glad I saw this because we can ask William, what's the deal? And so we covered that in some pretty good detail here. Spoiler alert, it's fine wherever you put it, essentially. Eventually, as we went through the conversation, he came around and said, well, if you put it on the outside, there's a better chance that your seal can have some grease on it and stay a little bit better lubricated. So there is that. Essentially, no wrong way to do it, in spite of what I was told multiple times. So I don't feel bad that I was doing something wrong there. And then we also just talk about wheel bearing service as well, and as that relates to the video. So a lot of good information there. If you've not seen the Boxer2valve video on this or any of the services, it's worth checking out on YouTube for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's great summary there. I mean, he goes over it in detail, so please have a listen. If you have any additional questions or anything like that, pop in the comments. We'll try to get you answers. Even if we don't know the answer, we'll find out. We spend a lot of time Googling all of this stuff. So
that's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So and a final period on that. So Nick, I've got 2 Audis and 1 Innie.
2 Audis and 1 Innie
on my top hat spacer. So the Innie is on the green machine because that everybody was like, oh, it's got to be on the inside. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll put it on the inside, and I put the wheel back together. But it was on the outside on the 77S. That's how it came from the factory. That wheel has not been apart. And when I got a new wheel for my 90S, it was on the outside when I bought the wheel and I left it there. I did go back and make sure there was no bearing play, at least checking the wheel on the axle when it's assembled. So all's well. So for me, 1 Innie and 2 Audis, and it's going to stay that way until I have to do something else.
Right. Yeah. It was interesting listening to the clip too, because initially we were trying to cover, /5, 6, and 7. But William mentions that in a lot of ways it actually extends back into the /2 series as well, which I was glad to hear, because when we were going through all of the issues with the top hat and trying to figure out where it was supposed to be, I wasn't really sure how to answer, because I've never rebuilt a /5, 6, or 7 spoked wheel. All my other bikes had snowflakes, and my conversion is a /2. So I thought, well, it's the /2, so it's probably just different. But that being said, now knowing that, I have an innie on the /2, because when I took that bike apart and re-greased the bearings and everything, that's how it was assembled, and I put it back together
the same way. Exactly. Now, let me ask you this. Now that you've got the slash wheel you bought at the rally, when that goes on that bike, are you going to leave it in or out?
Well,
because you'll have an opportunity to change it if you want.
Like I said, it's probably just going to get used as a temporary wheel to make the roller while I have the other wheels built, which I might actually try to build myself just so I can see what it's like to spoke wheels. So I think when I put it all together, I might put it on the inside. And for the only reason of when we were changing the tire, when we got the flat tire on the green machine and we pulled everything apart, I dropped that top hat spacer immediately on the ground.
Yep.
And so to me, even just that inconvenience is enough for me to say, you know what, I'm putting it on the inside. I'll never drop it. I'll never forget to put it back on. And I agree that, it probably will grease better, if it's mounted the other way, but I don't know. It just feels like, I don't know. I'm what do I say? A suspenders and belt kind of guy. So like, if there's a way to prevent me from making a mistake, I'm going to take that step.
I agree. Yeah. And the first time I did a wheel bearing service, it was at a Airhead Tech Days up in Kansas City 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was. And as I mentioned, I was really distracted. That was just a hard environment for me to work in. Sure. As a result, now I'm remembering the top hat, I forgot to put it on the outside. And so we got the wheel on. I cranked it down, the rear wheel we're talking about. Got the wheel on, got the axle put on, went to spin the wheel, and it was just locked in place.
Because you just pinched it all together.
Yeah, exactly. And I forgot to put the spacer on. So there you go. There's maybe another reason, yet another one to put it on the inside.
But again, there's not really a wrong way here. No. It sounds, from the research that we've also done, in addition to William's clip that we're going to listen to, it sounds like BMW started one way and switched at some point, likely around when they went from the /5 to the /6, and they stopped putting that hubcap on, because on the 5s, the hubcap would hold that top hat in place regardless of where you mounted it. So even the factory changed what they did here. Again, there's really no wrong way to do this. So don't get spun up on this. Just do what you think is right.
But make sure you have it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I think that's probably covering it in ad nauseum, especially since they're going to now listen to this from William. So we'll wrap this up here. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please jump in the comments if you've got any questions or thoughts on any of the stuff we talked about today. I'll throw any links that we chatted about in the description. And if you're looking for a custom bike you want to fix, let us know. We can put you in touch with the one that we mentioned earlier. I think that's it. Daren, you got anything else?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is for the 247 audio podcast, we're off for another couple weeks, and we'll be back with new programs starting August 15th with Celia and Shay, the dynamic riding duo from Florida.
Nice. Looking forward to that. All right, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
Toodles. On the line with William Plam from Boxer2valve and Wonderleash America. William, I always forget that other moniker and what you guys do there. So duly noted, parts supplier, not only for Airhead stuff, but also the full BMW range. Our topic today is wheel bearings, and specifically, I want to talk about wheel bearing setup for /5/6/7 spoke wheels. I think those are all pretty much the same, with maybe the /5 having a few minor variances. Am I right there?
Yeah. There are some minor variances, and actually everything will also carry back to pre-69 bikes too, in a way.
Oh, okay. Perfect. So first thing I want to ask you about, and this has been recently a topic of conversation for me and a couple other friends, is the top hat spacer. The top hat spacer is the spacer on the left side of the rear wheel bearing assembly, the bearing stack, if you will. I've always had it on the outside of the wheel. I've seen that placement in diagrams. Also, factory brochure photos from back in the day show that top hat spacer on the outside, essentially covering the seal on the outside of the seal cap. A lot of people run that top hat spacer, including you, I think, in the Boxer2valve video. When you do the bearing reassembly, it's placed inside of the bearing cap underneath the seal, so it's sort of inside the bearing stack and not exposed to the elements. So I've seen it done both ways. I've always had it on the outside. People have sort of corrected me and said, you've got it in there wrong. So what's going on with the placement there? Apparently there's two ways, neither one's wrong.
Yeah, that's pretty much, that sums it up. I think you're right that the diagram does show it with that the wide flange facing outward. But technically that's probably the right way to do it, because the diagrams are usually very correct. Essentially, I don't really think it matters, because the most important function of that piece is not the flange itself, but the spacing element of it, and the fact that the seal rides on it is basically a surface for the seal to ride on. So by putting it on the inside, the flange inside the seal, I don't really, there's enough clearance in there for it to be, and it's just going to be less prone to, drop out when you take the wheel off and roll across the floor and you have to go searching for it because it's captivated. And I think it works either way, honestly. So that's been what I've deduced.
Yeah, I think you touched on the conventional wisdom there. Why most people may have shifted to putting it on the inside is that when you take the wheel off and it's on the outside, it's actually on the axle. And as you say, it could drop, it could fall off. You could step on it, you could lose it, you could misplace it. Somewhere along the line, somebody deduced, hey, we can just put it on the inside, no harm, no foul. And as you say, it's captive in there. I guess my question on this is, and I don't have much of an engineering background, but my thought was, okay, so in the video where you do the bearing replacement, check the preload and all that sort of stuff, and get the preload right with the wetting band. I was wondering though, when that spacer is put inside or underneath the bearing cap, does that put any additional preload or force on the stack that you're not already measuring when it's out because it's behind those 5 Allen bolts? Am I sort of creating a problem that doesn't exist there?
Yeah, I don't think that it really will change anything, because when you put it in that way, you can see that there's actually you can still move it back and forth when the flange is on the inside, which means that basically it's not going to have any effect on the preload, because it's the axle that's going to be pushing on there. But just kind of occurred to me that maybe there's another reason why you want it on the outside, and maybe that is the better way to do it, kind of in hindsight, is because if you that way some grease will flow out, when it gets hot, and keep that seal lubricated.
That's a good point.
The flange on the inside is going to keep grease away from the seal surface. That could be a good thing, but could be equally a bad thing. So,
yeah.
But I think either way, I've seen it done both ways. I've done it both ways, and mostly put it on the inside. I haven't figured any reason why not to, and but the grease thing. But this is that's really kind of stretching it a little bit. I always put grease on the seal anyway.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
probably enough.
Exactly.
I think if you really want to be correct, you should follow the diagram, put the flange on the outside. When you assemble it, when you do have that in your hand, try and put it in the other way and see how there's plenty of clearance for that flange. It'll move in there. It's not going to affect the preload settings or anything like that.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
You kind of make your own choice. That's the beauty of it. We have a choice.
There's options there, and I think you really touched on it. If you're going for the 100-point restoration and know somebody's going to be going over your bike tit to tat, you want that spacer on the outside because that's the correct way it is in the diagram and in the photos. So we'll leave it at that. I'm glad we got to discuss that because I was a little confused. You know, somebody went as far to say as, "Hey, you've got it on there wrong," and I'm just thinking, wait a minute. You know, that's I don't think that's the case. Okay, so bearing service. I want to talk about this a little bit. This has come up for me in the garage here recently, and let me sort of phrase the question this way. I've purchased a number of /6 and /7 bikes here in the past 5 or 6 years. With varying degrees of known maintenance and mileage. For instance, I bought a 77S about 5 or 6 years ago. When I got the bike, for the front wheels, I just pulled off the end caps on the wheel just to have a look at the bearings, and they were kind of rusty. There wasn't a lot of grease in there. They didn't spin freely. Easy to know those need to be replaced. Conversely, I purchased another 77S here in the past year, real low mileage bike, about 15,000 miles, and did the same thing on the front wheel, pulled the end caps off. There was grease in there. It was okay. It was a little brown, but the bearings were in good shape. And all I did there on the front wheel, I didn't pound out the assembly. I just took the bearings out. I've got a bearing packer with LM50 in it and just simply ran some new grease through there, made sure it was all new, good grease, and reinstalled. I'm assuming that is an advisable and okay method, one you would recommend as far as sort of repacking and reusing bearings that are in good shape, no?
Absolutely, yeah, especially with something with so few miles on it. And if everything specs out and the race still look good and the rollers look good, there's no reason necessarily just replace them. They're designed and they're capable of lasting for many years with proper greasing. So clean them, put new grease in, or just put new grease in, forcing the old grease out. Essentially, to absolutely a wonderful thing to do. And if you were to do that, I think regularly, the bearings would theoretically last for a lifetime.
Yeah, indeed. It's like I say, especially on the front wheel, there isn't a whole lot to it. Assuming that the shimming is correct and you don't have any wobble or wiggle when the wheel is on the front axle, you know the shimming's right, especially if it's a factory bike that hasn't been done. Really not a big concern there necessarily. So, yeah, and speaking of, so you say every so often, I guess that would vary on usage and sort of riding conditions and style. You know, for me, I do water crossings a lot just out of necessity. So that might be something that's a little more often for me. Generally speaking, though, I mean, what are we talking? Every, 10 years, every other tire change? What's sort of a reasonable interval there if you were going to do that on the front wheel?
I think it really depends on your riding style and how many miles you put on. Because a tire could last for many years, right? So I think that if you did it like every say 4 or 5 years, that should be like really a good thing. And with a lot of use, maybe every 3, something like that. The grease doesn't really break down all that fast, but it just really depends, I think, on how many miles you're putting on and what the environment is and all that. But Normally they call for I believe the specification is 20,000 miles.
Okay.
30,000 kilometers. That's what I believe to be the case. But that is kind of considering replacement at that point. So if you wanted to preserve, it's easy enough to do. It's not that big of a deal to do. Every few years, I think, then you would probably, with that little bit of effort, save yourself the need to really think about replacement once they've been put in properly.
Here's a word I've never used before, or a phrase: grease technology. Has it improved over the years? I would imagine the compounds, maybe in what most of us use, the LM50, the liquid moly, might be a little bit different than what was originally put in those bikes in the mid 70s.
Yeah, I think as everything, technology improved. Back in the 70s, the grease that was specified by BMW was Shell Retinax, and it was kind of a brownish, light brown, dark, kind of between brown and yellow. The Shell Retinax, that was it for a while, for many years, and I think they don't really make that anymore. They haven't for a while. I tried to get that because I just thought it'd be cool to use the real stuff, but so the new thing that I like is that the LM50 from Liquid Moly, and they do have a lot of technology goes into it with the different additives to keep the viscosity of the grease correct, so that it doesn't like turn into to get thin with heat, but nonetheless does thin out enough to spread out and move. The old greases seem to be over the years, when you take them apart, you probably run into this too. It gets like really thick and crusty almost. The grease that's not in contact with the bearing surfaces, that kind of sits around behind the seal, gets really hard on those old greases when you take it apart. And I think that the new greases that we're using now, they kind of maintain their sort of, gooey, greasy like consistency.
Yeah, they do grease things better, put it that way. And yeah, you're exactly right. I think when you're describing there sort of the condition of an older original grease in a component, where you see that, what you were talking about, where it's dried out, maybe discolored, probably see that more. I've seen that more anyway. My experience has been in the steering head bearings more than anywhere else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because one thing about wheel bearings is they do get hot, melts the grease or changes the sort of viscosity, allows it to flow. The steering head bearings, it's just sitting there. There's no rotational moment. There's no source for heat to come up, so that it cakes up even a lot faster. And a lot of times you'll get a steering head bearing that maybe it's not that bad, but the grease is dried up and solidified in such a way that it's forming like a little in between the rollers, and that's what's causing the stiction, is just that the grease doesn't allow the roller, because it's gotten so hard and sort of brittle, that it's actually looking like a wheel chalk on a trailer, like that. Yeah.
As I mentioned, all the /6/7 bikes I bought here recently over the past 5 or 6 years or whatever, I mean, inevitably, that's always the first thing I notice, and I just almost always plan on that, is a steering head bearing replacement, knowing that grease is more than likely going to be in that condition. Before we move on from this, I want to talk about this same sort of procedure, servicing the bearings for the rear wheel, and it's a little bit different than the front wheel. So again, here earlier we were talking about the bearing stack on the rear wheel and the similarities between the /5, 6, and 7 series. On the rear wheel, it's easy to access the bearing on the left side. So, you take the cap off and wherever your spacer is, whatever, and it's sitting right there looking at you right in the eye. So that's easy to come out. You can inspect the race, make sure there's no notching or any damage there. Again, clean, repack, or just push some new grease through it. However, I noticed this on my 77S wheel. I was putting on some new tires and going through this. What I was able to do on this was I could take out, when you take out the bearing on the left side, you can also access, I guess, what is the smaller inner spacer. You can just sort of stick your finger down in there. And when I pulled that out on the /7, I noticed it had a rubber ring on the spacer, which I'm just sort of guessing I'd add a little bit tighter fitment and less wobble for that inner spacer. I had not noticed that on the /6 wheels, rear wheels I had taken apart. Was that piece added to the /7? Why was I seeing it there and not on some of the earlier bikes?
Yeah, there was something about that. Now that you mention it,
yeah,
I think just to keep that outer spacer sort of, or the spacer centralized.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's just there so that because it can move. So when you pull the axle out, and then if there's not enough tension or enough grease in there to kind of hold it into position, it'll deflect away. And then when you go to put the axle back in again, it's not centered, and then you have alignment problem getting the axle back through.
Exactly.
So I think that was put there just to kind of hold it in position. So for reassembly, the ease of reassembly.
Good. Yeah, that was my thought too. And then going further on this, so yeah, like I said, I had the inner spacer out. Then I could see sort of the back side of the right bearing, the wide side of the bearing. So that is not as easily accessible, except as from you. In essence, it's not easy to take out the on the right side. You can't necessarily pull out the other smaller spacer and the lip seal or whatever, the other wheel seal, and access it that way. That's not as easy an operation to do. So what I did, I've got the left side bearing out. I pull out the small spacer. I can see the wide end of the right bearing. And essentially what I did there, William, was just put some LM40 in that hole. I used the small spacer, the bottom end of it, the opposite end where the wedding band sits, and just sort of pack some grease into that end of the bearing, reassembled everything, and called it good.
Yeah, that's certainly, that's an okay thing to do. But the right way to do it is to if you want to take the whole thing apart, really the only way that I know that works well is to take it apart as a complete assembly.
That's right.
And so you basically use your axle and you put that through on the I guess it's the right hand side, and then you need to fashion some sort of spacer that will go from the inner bearing race of the left to cover the first few threads on the end of the axle. So you can cut a piece of tubing. You have a lathe, you can make a really nice piece of tool there. And then the washer nut on there, tighten it down to approximately 30 foot-pounds or so, the wheel bearing spec. And now the whole thing's captive. Then you can heat the wheel up with a heat gun, preferably just warm it up a little bit. And then to expand the aluminum, and then you hit the axle with a suitable hammer and drive the whole pack out. It's not really that much work. And now you've got everything out in your hand. You can inspect everything. You can clean, grease. You may not have to replace anything, but at least that way you can get everything, greased properly. Then you warm the wheel back up again. And going back in, it's just the exact opposite, goes in the other way, and usually just almost falls in, and give it a couple taps, and that's it. And then as far as the bearing adjustment is concerned, that you can really check that too when that's out, because that outer sleeve of the bearing, I think we showed this in one of the videos, where you basically can feel the deflection. If it's really hard to move, it's too tight. If it just moves under moderate pressure, back and forth, it's perfect. And if it flops around back and forth, it's too loose. And then to correct that, you need to change the shim size. Now, the shims have been difficult to get for a long time from what I understand. They were a hardened steel. You can't just, use a piece of water pipe and cut it up. It's not going to last, So they used to come in 0.5 millimeter increments, and you would just find the right shim and you could get it really close. Not so easy to do anymore. So what we've got now since fairly recently are some hardened stainless steel shims that fit in there, and they're in 0.1 millimeter increments. So that means that if between the combination of adding one or two or three shims or whatever you need to, and maybe sanding down your existing spacer, you can get a perfect adjustment without having to have a whole range of spacers, because you can just have your one spacer, and with the addition of these shims, you can get the preload spot on with just a little bit of finesse. And they're very, very cheap. I don't remember what they cost, but we sell them in a little baggie of 10. So it's enough for several motorcycles and several applications. And those will work on the front wheels as well as the rear wheels on everything with a 17 millimeter or 14 millimeter axle, which would be all the /5, 6, and 7s, and actually, I think up through 84, if I'm not mistaken. So that covers a wide range.
Good. And just to put a button on this, as far as what I did, admittedly, I think I took a little bit of a shortcut, and sort of what I did there and described, just sort of cramming some grease in the hole and getting it into that right side bearing. But you bring up a good point. I've done a full sort of heat and pound out before. It's not difficult to do at all. I mean, for the home mechanic, not everybody has a full assortment of tools and things, but you really don't need a lot. I mean, you need a propane torch, and as you said, some spacers. I've read somebody commented on the Boxer2valve video that they cut down an old handlebar, and that works well to fill that space. Yeah. For me, I just went to the hardware store, took the axle with me, found, I think, two and a half spacers in the hardware store section, the drawers with all the nuts and bolts and stuff. Found what I needed, and no problem there. So, and like you say, it's not a difficult procedure. What I enjoyed about yours and where you explained setting the preload there. You can really get into the minutia in detail on that. I mean, I've seen some Brooke Reams videos, where he's got string and a fishing line or something, and he's testing the pull and the foot pounds and the pull, and that's fine. I mean, some people really want to get down there. There's a much more detailed and exacting way to do that. I think you explained it really well in the video and mentioned it there. You just sort of check the tension on that big spacer. You move it with your thumbs, and you'll find the right spot pretty easily. It's not that difficult to do. So basically what I'm saying is, if you've never done it and you think it needs to be done, watch the video. Don't be intimidated. It's easy to do. The last thing I want to mention here on this to button up this topic is talking about servicing the bearings and greasing the bearings. I don't know if you've ever used this tool. I don't know how effective it is. I bought one a number of years ago. I've used it. It's a bearing greaser from CycleWorks. So it's essentially an aluminum piece. You put it on the end of your grease gun. It's got a couple O-rings on it and a hole in between the O-rings. You cram it inside of the hole there where the axle goes and shoot some grease to it. I don't know how effective it is. I guess it's really only reaching sort of that cavity where the spacers are. Have you used that tool? Are you familiar with it? And does it get the grease where it needs to go?
I'm not familiar with it, but it sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And you squirt some grease in there, and even if it doesn't fully penetrate everywhere, those bearings are going to scream for joy when they get that little shot of grease. So it sounds like a great idea. Sounds like a wonderful tool.
Yeah. I've used it in the past. I don't know how effective it is, but as you say, the bearings are going to have a little a little party in there when they see the some fresh LM50 coming to the rescue.
And it'll spread itself out once it gets up to operating temperature, and any grease is better than none.
Well said.
That's really what I think is the bottom line. Anything is better than nothing.
Well said. All right, William, great discussion, great topic. As always, we'll catch up with you next time.
Awesome. Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on the Short Wheelbase Podcast, presented by the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. To join the club, visit bmwmoa.org. You can find full-length episodes of the excerpts heard here on the Airhead 247 podcast. The Short Wheelbase Podcast is produced and edited by Nick Malozzi. Audio segments by Jeff Glover. You can check in with Nick at Airhead Misfits on Instagram.